your night off and you're at home, please don't spend your night alone. You can join us now on AMN, and next week at this time we'll be on again. We're the Austin Songwriters Group, the ASG. We'll keep you in the loop with writers you have to hear and see. The ASG, Songwriters in the Round. Hey, you're watching In the Round on the Austin Music Network. I'm the host, Adam Donmoyer, and what we do each and every week is bring on songwriters to tell their stories. And that's what we're doing this week. All we ask is that you sit back and relax and enjoy the show. After watching, if you like what you hear, and you will, please go to their websites and buy their CDs and support live music. And when you can, go and see them live. You've picked an excellent, excellent night to be watching. So pop a video cassette in your recorder and tape it so you can watch it again and again. I'm going to introduce you to these folks. I got Freebo on the end there, the great Freebo, and I'm going to tell them a little bit about you, Freebo. You know, the big thing a lot of people know about you as a bass player. You worked with and toured with Bonnie Raitt for 10 years. You did a little bit of songwriting with Bonnie.
I actually didn't do any songwriting back then.
I thought you had one credit.
No, not as a songwriter.
Okay.
No.
All right. All right. Well, we'll get to it.
Which is part of my story, actually, Adam. So that's good that you said that.
Okay. All right. Recently he has taken the big jump to writing songs, and we're going to talk about that and talk about all the work. He's a fascinating guy. So his website is freebo.com. We'll talk a little more here in a second, but I also want to introduce you guys to Jim. Jim is an incredible writer. Photoglo is the last name, P-H-O-T-O-L-O.
G-L-O, P-H-O-T-O-G-L-O.
All right, and jimphotoglo.com is the website. And he, of course, is a bass player, worked with Dan Fogelberg. You've done a lot of background vocals, and you've had a number of songs on the charts, and including Faith Hill doing one of your tunes, which was an amazing tune, and I want to talk about that. But all right, so I'm a little nervous, and I'll admit it. I'm dropping pieces of paper all over the place.
Well, we're doing our best to make you nervous, Adam, so it's okay. You know, at least you're responding to our vibe.
Well, all right, Freebo, can we start with you? Can I ask you a question about this new album, Dog People? All right, this is a tribute to Garbo.
To Garbo, and to all of our four-legged friends, and to the human canine connection, really. And Garbo was inspired by Garbo and my connection with her. But I took a little bit further, and I have one that, from Shaggy's point of view, Shaggy is this imaginary dog whose mind my co-writer and I got in, and we wrote the song from Shaggy's perspective. And another one called My Dog Has Fleas, where I took the ukulele and woke up one day and said, I got to make a song out of that and use that melody, and just came up with My Dog Has Fleas. My dog has fleas. Kind of went from there. I heard a moan in the yard. There it just kind of goes on and on. But so and some old favorites.
You did a Neil Young tune, right?
Did Old King, a Neil Young song, and first I kind of listened to the way he did it. So I can't do it the way he did it. So I substituted a mandolin and a slide guitar. A friend of mine, Mark Shark, is an excellent player, and just kind of put my spin on that. I did Old Blue, which is the first song I ever learned on guitar.
That's cool.
So it was nice to come 45 years round circle on that one. And I did Old Shep, the saddest of all dog songs, made most famous by Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
And so it's a combination of original songs and cover songs, and I'm real proud of it. It is what it is. It's that specific genre, and
I think it's great. All right, so you started out, and in the early 80s, you started getting a lot of cuts.
Well, in the early 80s, I actually made pop records in Los Angeles. I was signed to a record deal in 80. In 81, I had singles out as a pop artist that made their way into the 30s and 20s in the pop charts, on Billboard, and I did some international travel and opened a series of dates for the Beach Boys.
Right, you got pretty big in Japan too.
I did, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
around this time.
I had some notoriety there, and at the same time, in the early '80s, the climate was changing. Video was coming on, and it was a strange time for me. At the same time, songs I had written for my record started getting cut in Nashville by country artists. So, on the recommendation of a friend, Wendy Waldman, I went down to see what Nashville was all about, and it was incredible. It was just such a wonderful community, and it's also a very compact community. The business is all centered around a few square blocks of buildings. The publishing companies, the record companies, recording studios are all in one little area. So all of a sudden, I sort of backed into a career as a songwriter and started having success right off the bat. It's amazing that it happened the way it did, but that's essentially what happened. So I spent the next essentially 18 years as a songwriter. At the same time, I made a couple records for a Japanese label because of the success of the first two records. At the same time, I started a band with Russell Smith of the Amazing Rhythm Aces and Bernie Ledden from the Eagles.
C&W?
Run C&W.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a huge cult following.
So we did a couple records for MCA Records, and you can still find those records on eBay. They're hard to find.
Yeah.
I have a feeling someday somebody's going to license them from MCA, and then they'll be available. I don't know. I mean, what with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I would have thought that would have been the time.
Yeah,
but anyway.
Tell people about this. I mean, you took these old tunes and then you did them in a bluegrass style, right?
We took that sweet soul music of the 60s and 70s and played it the way God meant for it to be played, bluegrass style.
Just give them a short example.
Yeah, play a little. This cracks me up.
I got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I got the month of May. Well, I guess you say what can make me feel this way, my girl. Talking about my girl.
Do the riff for them.
Like that. Oh,
Do the-
well, I don't. Anyway.
I like that.
Oh, don't worry about my notes. This is sort of my trademark. You guys.
So we did that, and we made a little noise with that, did a little touring, went to Europe with that. But at the same time, I was keeping up my my pursuit of the popular song. And at the end of, right around 1999, I was going through some pretty severe, pretty severe life changes. I was going to become a father for the first time.
Yeah.
And I was just sort of looking back and thinking, I came into this as a performer, as a singer-songwriter. And the hardest, most frustrating part for me was the distance between what I created and the audience. And so I decided to start putting out my own records and essentially eliminating all those people in the middle.
Sure.
My records, my songs, from me to my audience. That simple. And I'm having a great time doing it.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to talk about the new CD, and we'll come back. I like to bounce back and forth.
Sure.
So, yeah. So, okay. All right. So that being said, were you in any bluegrass bands that did soul music? No. How's that for transition, Freebo?
Well, it's an interesting transition, Adam. I was in a lot of bands that played soul music. I was
You were in a lot of bands. I mean,
I was, and there's bands that you don't even have there. I was in a Zydeco band for a long time. I was in a band.
Zydeco music?
Yeah, I played Zydeco for a long time. It was called Zydeco Party Band. That was all through a lot of the 90s in LA as I was making this transition to a singer-songwriter. In the early 80s, after I left Bonnie, I was playing in a band was called Steppin' Laser, which is originally was Steppin' Razor, which is a Peter Tosh song.
Yeah.
Then it became Steppin' Laser because we kind of were going into the whole thing of the 80s and 90s and synthesizers and sequences. And so we kind of took, it's like new wave goes to the Caribbean with some ska and bizarre stuff.
So is that why your album sounds so eclectic? Because
I think my album sounds so eclectic because I'm so eclectic. I mean, I just come from a very diverse background. I mean, there was a lot of classical music around the house. There was a lot of jazz. There was a lot of Louis Armstrong. There were a lot of show tunes. I was fortunate to go to see the original production of West Side Story and My Fair Lady on Broadway, because my parents were into that kind of stuff. I grew up with all the Richard Rodgers stuff, Carousel, South Pacific. I played tuba in a marching band in high school, so I was very familiar with John Philip Sousa stuff.
Sure.
I'm old enough to where I was around before the advent of rock and roll, so I'm aware of Patti Page and people like that, and Frank Sinatra era and the big bands, and then the so-called advent of rock and roll, and the Chuck Berry and Little Richard and the Coasters and all that stuff, and then the 60s with Motown and the Beatles and the Stones, and then the singer-songwriter thing was right in the middle of that with Bonnie and Jackson Browne and the Eagles, and a lot of people hung out in L.A. in the early 70s, and then that latter stuff, and then John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, whom I played with,
Right.
and a band called the Blues Busters, which was Little Feat. It was Paul Barrere from Little Feat and T. Lavis from the Dregs and Catfish Hodge, and we took the blues and turned them inside out. So a long answer to your short question is I am eclectic, and I have a lot of different musical influences, and they're all coming out in my music, which is still really finding its style. And I think that's what my third record, my next record is going to be about, is how do I synthesize, so to speak? How do I keep my eclecticism? How do I stay true to myself and my roots, but at the same time form a hybrid that speaks of me, that can put my lyrical content into a musical background or a musical context. That works and kind of defines me, and there's a lot of ways I could produce it. I could produce it rockish with drums. I could produce it totally acoustically, and Jim and I talk about this all the time, having one foot in the folk world with Folk Alliance and doing that whole thing as a singer-songwriter thing, being able to get up with the bass and rock. And so I'm still finding that, and I think this third record is going to be a defining type of a thing. It may not be the defining record, but the record is helping to define me, and I'm helping to define it. So it's a really exciting place that I feel like I'm transitioning into.
When do you think you'll release it?
Well, first I have to make it.
All right.
and I'm still, as a matter of fact, Jim and I were supposed to write a song for it today, start to get up, and we didn't get up till almost noon, and so that'll happen, either later today or in Dallas, but we'll do it. And I'm doing a lot of co-writing with a lot of different people. I'm real excited about that, and taking the relationships that I've been really fortunate to make with a lot of very talented people, and do them, and find which of my older things are, and just kind of synthesize everything, put it together. So it's very much in the process of being done.
Since you brought it up, can I ask you guys about a songwriting session? Saying, all right, we're going to write a song. Does that always work out? I mean, what is your approach to co-writing a song? How do you do it?
Well, I was actually on that treadmill, as I mentioned before, for 18 years, where it was in Nashville. It's very much a show up at 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
drink a pot of coffee, talk. Guys carry around notebooks with titles or tapes with snippets of songs that they may be working on. I come from a very improvisational style. I actually studied improvisation as an actor in Los Angeles, and so things that I'm most proud of are the things that were made up on the spot. In the midst of a conversation, a title will come out, and then it's sort of born in the room. It's relevant to what's going on in the writers' lives, so that makes it a little bit more real. As far as which comes first, music or lyrics, I've never been one or the other. I do both, and every song has a different role that I play in it. Sometimes I've been in situations where I did nothing more than edit. I've been in situations where I sat in a room with somebody else and did everything, and they edited me.
Which can be vital. I mean,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's not there is as important as what is there.
Yeah. So have you guys done a lot of co-writing together?
We've not done anything.
So you don't, I mean, does it always work? Or are there people that you think on paper it's going to be great, we're going to write a great song, and then you get together and you're like, huh. I mean.
Well, my favorite story about that is that there's a writer in Nashville by the name of Mike Reed, and he's actually a friend of ours in common. Freebo actually met him about 20 years before I did. He originally was a football player, played at Penn State, celebrated as a football player. Then he played for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he was a celebrated All-Pro.
Oh, this is the guy. Yeah, I've heard a lot about him. He's been a huge success as a
huge
songwriter.
Success.
So not only did he do amazingly well in the sports world, but then all of a sudden he
won a Grammy. He's been ASCAP Writer of the Year, and he wrote "I Can't Make You Love Me" for Bonnie Raitt.
Yeah.
So he's done okay.
Yeah, he's done all right.
So we thought, yeah, this on paper should be really good. And we got together about 5 or 6 times and sat in the room and stared at each other and didn't get a damn thing. So, can I say that?
Yeah, sure. Heck yeah.
So after years of sitting and drinking coffee and just talking, I mean, we realized the first thing wasn't maybe going to work so well, so we would just hang out. Get together and hang out from time to time and talk about life, and suddenly it struck us both that the time was right, and we sat down and wrote one of my favorite songs that's going to be on the record that I'm now making.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What's the title?
That's How Strong Love Is. And it was really to have gone from where we were to where this song came out. We were really firing on all pistons. It was an incredible experience. It was operating at a really high level because we were really of one mind, and a third personality was born in this song. And even the initial idea, you know, I had sort of thought, yeah, I can't stop thinking of this because that's how strong her love is, and we were going with that. And it just all of a sudden dawned on us that it wasn't about a male-female relationship. It's the healing power of love beyond the romantic love. And that came out. We dropped the one adjective, or the pronoun, or whatever it is, and suddenly it was a whole different thing. It was a much bigger theme.
Yeah.
And it was just a great writing experience. And so the short answer to your question is it does not always work.
But it's interesting to me because in my experiences, when that happens, I always feel awkward afterwards. It's sort of like when, you know, you have that, I don't know, anxiety, and you see the person the next day, and it's uncomfortable, and I feel like I'm talking about something entirely different other than songwriting.
Right.
But you understand to have it's impressive to me that, all right, it didn't work the first time or the second time or the third time, but you guys kept getting together, and then one day it clicked. So apparently.
He and I had enough of a basis as friends to where we respected each other's work enough to keep at it. There is such a level of intimacy. It is like the failed date. And very often after a failed date, people are not willing to try it again.
Yeah.
And I've been there. I've had, you know, high hopes for a writing situation that didn't work. And, you know, we just never got around to trying it again. But I have a handful of people that I have written continuously with over and over again that, again, those relationships are also close as friends. And so we've gotten a lot of work out of just talking about what's in our hearts and minds.
That's very cool. All right, Freebo. On that note, I want to ask you about, because as a musician who's been playing with so many people and on so many different instruments, what made you decide? Because see, if I was in I try to put myself in the other person's shoes, right? And I'm trying to imagine having this successful career playing music. What made you decide to, I don't know, get out of that safety zone and to write?
Well, that's a real good way of putting it, getting out of the safety zone. And I don't think I realized as much that that's what I was doing, getting out of the safety zone. I didn't realize that until I got out of it and I realized how unsafe I felt and all the challenges and all the fears that I had to deal with. I didn't decide. I mean, just like John Lennon's famous quote, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Well, my plans were not to be a musician, not to be a bass player, not to be a singer-songwriter. My plans were to be a doctor. Turns out they were somebody else's plans. With my failed college career, my failed academic college career, not because I didn't have the brains, because I didn't have the motivation. I had no interest in it. I was interested in life 101, which I've done very well in as far as, well, but I mean, as far as certainly experiencing myself and learning about myself. And I happened to wander into a situation with a rock and roll band after I happened to wander in a situation at a camp with a counselor who taught me the basic 5, 6 chords on the guitar, learned Old Blue as my first song, knew how to play guitar, went home, jammed with this other guy. Eventually got to be where I could jam. My ear, which could always hear, which always went to bass registers, I would always go to the bass notes, which are the four low strings on the guitar are the same as a bass, but the bass is an octave deeper. So I knew that relationship. I knew what I wanted to hear in my head, and I would just start to play bass. And that led me to jam with people doing the bass things. And I ran into a cat named Jerry Donahue in a school in Germany. That was my first band. He could hear that. Hey, why don't you play bass? Started to do it. Got my first experience doing that. It was fun. Went to the University of Pennsylvania. Met a guy named Mark Jordan in the Glee Club there. We sat down and jammed. Same thing. He's a
keyboard player?
Keyboard player. Very good keyboard player. He's played with Bonnie. He's played with Jackson Browne. He's played with Winona. He's played with just a whole bunch of people. It's excellent, real good songwriter as well. Wrote a couple songs that Bonnie did in the 70s. And so that started a band called Edison Electric, and halfway through Edison Electric, well, near the beginning of it, doing a TV show, as a matter of fact, I just realized, I don't know how I got here, but something about this feels right, and this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I can make a living doing this. I have to make a great living. I just have food, clothing, and shelter. Clothing is jeans and a T-shirt. Shelter is an apartment. Food is your basics. And that's what I did, and for years that worked for me. I could put my creativity into playing the bass, take that part of the music, help shape the music, and have a shot of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I think what happened, and of course Bonnie discovered me, we discovered each other and played as a duo for 3 years together before she even got a band together on her first 3 records, which was a very intimate kind of a thing. Just, you know, Bonnie on her acoustic guitar and her National Steel, and Freebo on his Fender fretless bass. Two of us sitting next to each other, just like Jim and I are doing right now.
Oh my gosh! I can imagine what that would feel like.
It was very, very special. It was really, it was real intimate, and it gave me a real nice exposure. It definitely let the world see what I do, and gave me a different view of the world from a little bit of a pedestal.
Yeah.
But what happened was, I think I became more and more frustrated as a bass player because I obviously had more ideas than just the bass part. I would play the bass part according to chords that I would hear, harmonies I would hear, try and throw, hey, how about this idea for harmony? Well, usually the person who's driving the car doesn't want to hear from the backseat driver.
Yeah.
So you become perceived as the bass player, shut up, just be the bass player, play your part. And here I am trying to tell the guitar player what to do and harmony singers. Well, it eventually just occurred to me that I have all these things to do and all these things to say. And my context to say them in is not relevant. There's only so much I can do in the bass. And that's when I began to realize that I became more and more frustrated with my limited role and with these things that I had to say that wanted to come out. That eventually led me to saying, I think I need to do this. I need to find a context in which to get my ideas out. And I started to do that with producing other people. And eventually, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I need to do my own stuff. I'd started writing. For years, I'd try and sit down, come up with some sort of a guitar riff and and I got involved in the guitar, and I sort of come up with a melody, and I couldn't come up with the words, and I just couldn't put the pieces together. It was that way when I put the words down, ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-dee-dee, ba-dee-ba-dee-ba-dee, however they would go, that would lead me to some sort of the rhythmical structure, and my sense of melody could easily put that down, and the chords would find their way into it. And that started me on the songwriting path.
Yeah.
And then I started picking up things from all these people I'd been around that just almost came to me through osmosis, and started studying it, and then worked my way through the challenge of, first of all, finishing the song, when I think about starting a song, when I think about finishing it, about learning the song, about learning how to sing the song, my fears about singing, all my fears getting up in front of people all by myself, scary stuff. And it's all led me to where I am now. I think it's helped me tremendously as a human being, and I think my craft keeps getting better and better. And I've found more and more working with other writers has also helped me in that whole process. And the people that I work with, I find there are some people where it just flows and they get ideas like crazy, and I get ideas. And every once in a while you get together with somebody and it's just like pulling teeth. And it is like the bad date, or the failed date. And it just doesn't happen. And I'm at the point I'm not even embarrassed about it. It is what it is. The relationships, seek their own levels, and you find who you work with well and whom you don't. And so it's an ongoing process for me. And I got to tell you, I've never been more excited in my life. I've never felt more fulfilled in my life. I've never felt more seen. I've never felt more completely satisfied in what I'm doing. I've never felt more challenged.
That's fantastic. I got to share a lyric, and from the second verse of "She's My D.O.G." She's never, never angry, and she's never, never sad. She's like no other woman. She's the best I've ever had. Can you tell me the rest of it?
I don't have to do the dishes. I do anything I please. This bitch is never bitchy. She's my D.O.G.
I love that lyric. I got to tell you. I mean,
not one of my most sophisticated
I know,
lyrics,
and I felt bad because I feel like I'm almost bringing up a novelty lyric, but there's something so true about it. It's just a very nice lyric. Well, you both have had this as musicians, not as writers, talking about you as musicians, and I know I'm running out of time, but I could spend hours talking to you guys. But you both have had this great education. I mean, working with some amazing writers, like working with people like Bonnie Raitt and Dan Fogelberg. I mean, how do you what do you take away from that experience? How does that enrich your writing? Does it intimidate you and think, I can't write a song?
Well, the flip side to Freebo's story is that as a bass player, I mean, I've also gone out and played bass, and the process of playing bass, my songwriting style is very much based on bass. My guitar accompanying style is based on bass. I'm always leaning on the bass notes for my movement, for my tonal influence. It's not always root notes, it's passing tones and all that. So my style is very much based on that. So my experience with Dan really was as a sideman, and it was a musical experience, and I felt I feel that those things enrich me and enrich my writing. Not so much taking from his songs, but the experience of playing with other musicians. It enriches you as a musician, and that's why I don't limit myself to just being the singer-songwriter. I mean, even though that's my focus right now, is writing and creating my own CDs. I like working with other musicians because I feel it feeds my art. The same as I cook.
I love your recipe for tarragon chicken salad. I gotta tell you. It's good. And you say the secret is using the roasted chicken. They can go to your website, jimphotoglo.com, and they can download all these different recipes. That cracks me up. That's great. I mean, it's neat to see you guys have other interests. You're sharing that with the world.
I think that after a while it can make you a little nutty. I know my wife often says that the thing that attracts you to a person is eventually what will, you'll grow to. It will make you disdain. Because I am so much in my head all the time as a creative person, that I sort of blank out from time to time, and the actual process of creating a meal centers me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a good way to do for people, and have that immediate reward.
Just a quick interjection. We're staying at a friend's house, and last night we stopped at the Central Market in downtown Austin.
Oh, it's a very nice store.
And great place. And we decided, I said, Jim, do you mind? And he said, yeah, I'll be happy to. And he went and got the stuff, and we got to the house, and I said, take the groceries in. I took the groceries into the kitchen. They came to the grocery kitchen. Jim walks into the kitchen, and immediately starts to dissect the chicken, to do this whole thing, to prepare his meal, to the point where I wound up taking the suitcase and everything in. And 2.5 hours later was this fantastic chicken dinner with the best spinach I've ever had, a great rice pilaf, and just kind of just, and it was just, and he was just enjoying. He was like totally in his own zone, in this completely different place, totally apart from, you know, the way I know him from doing the music. It was fantastic.
That's cool. That's really neat, guys. There's so much. I mean, I want to tell people about your new CDs. They can pick up your CD by going to your website.
Either to my website or to CD Baby.
Or they can cdbaby.com/Photoglo, right?
Yeah, I think if you just go to CD Baby and then put Photoglo in, it'll get you there. Or if you go to my website, if you're interested in checking out the recipes, you know, you can go look at and see what else is on there, and then there is a button to press for ordering CDs as well.
And I mean, this is you doing a lot of tunes that some people will recognize, and then some tunes that they haven't heard as much of.
Right.
Which is very cool.
The next album, I'm about 95% with a new record, and a song that I wrote in the late '80s called "Fishing in the Dark" that was
the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band did.
Exactly.
That was a #1 hit for you. Yeah.
I've finally gotten around to doing my own version of it.
That's cool. I always love hearing a writer do it the way they kind of envisioned it.
It's really based on the original demo we did. It has all that same feel and influence. So I felt it was just time. Actually, this whole new CD is sort of based, it's all the songs that I have been playing as I've been out playing behind my latest CD. All the songs that weren't on that CD that people responded to and said, well, is that something I can get too? I took all of those songs and now created a new CD. So
that's great. So thank you guys so much for your time. I wanted to talk about Spinal Tap and the Muppets. I wanted to talk about you playing Paul McCartney's birthday, backing up John Belushi. See how I'm working it all in? You got to go to their websites. You got to, because Freebo.com and JimPhotoglo.com, because their bios are just interesting. The pictures on your website, all the, you know, I mean, people, you have so much you could share, and I appreciate you taking time and sharing it with us. I wish you luck with your songwriting. If people want to hear you guys, because I know you're working together more and more and doing house concerts, they can see you, well, you're going to be at Kerrville, right?
I'm going to be at Kerrville as a bass player, but I was invited to do the fall thing, the wine tasting thing in September. I think Jim and I are going to do that together as a Freebo Photoglo duo, whatever it is that we're doing. And I think we're going to be doing more and more of that around Texas. I mean, we refuse to become a group. You know, we have to maintain our individuality, our autonomy. We have to date other people, and we will do that, and we'll make our own records. But we really enjoy playing with each other. He gets a bass player and a harmony singer. I get a bass player and a harmony singer. We get to feed off each other, and hopefully the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts.